Good evening. My name is Millicent Collier, and I represent ChildServ. ChildServ is a children and family services organization in the Chicagoland, and tonight you're watching us live on ChildServ Live, brought to you on CAN TV 21. This is a live format. We invite you to call in with your questions at area code 312-738-1060. And ChildServ's mission is to help children to build better lives in the Chicago area where the communities and their families are at risk. Tonight, our guest is Mike Adams, and Mike is our Director of Advocacy and Church Relations for ChildServ. And Mike, you'll have to pardon me because I've got a frog in my throat and I'm very much aware of it, but we'll work with it, right?
That's fine.
Okay. Mike, why don't you start by telling us what advocacy is at ChildServ?
Advocacy covers an awful lot of ground at ChildServ. Advocacy actually comes from the Latin word advocare, which literally means to summon help. And we summon help at ChildServ in 4 different ways. One is through our services that are delivered every day to our clients. It's through financial gifts that might be given to help support those programs and services. It's through outreach and education where we can recruit other people to help. And it's also through public policy change, which I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about later.
Let's hope so. And Mike, what is so important about advocacy, though, at ChildServ?
Advocacy is really hardwired into the culture of ChildServ. It goes all the way back to our founding, which was with a group of Methodist deaconesses who came out of the Chicago Deaconess Society in the 1880s and 1890s here in Chicago, and their mission and social justice, their commitment to improving lives is at the heart of what it is that makes up advocacy. But advocacy is important beyond just providing relief, because you remember a moment ago I talked about public policy change. What we really want to address in advocacy, and what I'm really involved in with our board, with our partners, with a lot of our stakeholder groups, is systemic change. You know, if you think about the importance of things like the movement to eliminate slavery, the introduction of the Social Security system, all of those things, those fundamental changes that really improved lives for millions of people, they happened only because of public policy advocacy that changed the way we do business here.
Right. And today we certainly do have a need for that kind of change. So what is it exactly that ChildServ advocates for, and why?
At the end of the day, we advocate for our clients, their families, and their communities. We are trying to help them. Remember, our mission is to help at-risk children build, achieve, and sustain better lives. And our advocacy is all about making that happen. So we're advocating for our clients, their families, and their communities.
Okay, and I've got a map of where we do provide services in the Chicago area. We are in the Austin-Lawndale neighborhood as well as Greater Inglewood. Now, some communities, Mike, were actually marginalized before the very difficult economic times that we're experiencing today. And we know that in the last couple of years, there has been even more of a decline. So how has that impacted those communities that we serve?
You know, if you start off in a hole, then you have to climb out of the hole just to get started. And our marginalized communities, and it's no secret where those communities are. Those are communities that are lacking in resources. Those are communities that suffer from blight, they suffer from violence, they suffer from many things that don't necessarily happen out in the suburbs or happen in a lot of other parts of even Chicagoland. But those communities start off in a hole. And our economic malaise right now, but what we've been through over the last, since 2008, has obviously had a terrible effect on them, because it's been the elimination of resources that folks counted on to help them get up out of that hole. When those resources are gone, then obviously they either have to replace those resources or they have to stay where they are.
Okay, and you've also given me some information regarding, just how it affects the children that are in poverty. And we do see that for the African Americans and the Latino communities, we're looking at over 30% of the children that are living in poverty.
That's true, and it has gotten worse. Those data, what was just up was from 2009. What's up here is from 2010, and as you can see, the numbers have spiked considerably since 2007. The growth of child poverty has been remarkably bad, and it doesn't affect everybody equally. If you from that chart, you can see that Latino kids have suffered greatly. African American kids continue to suffer, and white kids have been increasing in their rate in child poverty as well.
I'll put it up again.
Okay.
All right. And what effect then is is this having on our children in the communities? Now, we've talked about, the poverty rates, among the children. We've talked about the fact that the communities are marginalized. And at this point, let me just remind our viewers to call in with any questions that you have for Mike regarding advocacy, or, as we're having this discussion. The number is area code 312-738-1060. Okay, Mike, so tell us how our children and our youths in these communities are faring.
Well, you can tell from the trend lines that they just looked at that, if you're just looking at child poverty alone, the trends are not good. But if you look beyond those large numbers and you begin to look at things like opportunities for early childhood education, those are being cut. If you're looking at after-school programs, the budgets for them are being cut. If you're looking at summer job opportunities, those are being cut. Every opportunity that's cut means that a child is left in place to suffer the consequences of this economic problem.
And if you're talking about, the dollars being cut, that really is, the activity and the result of the inactivity on the political scene. Okay, we are seeing that there is some quote-unquote restructuring in public policy. So, what do you see as the opportunities and challenges there?
Well, firstly, before we talk about the immediate opportunities and challenges, I think it's important to remember that Illinois has actually come a long way over the last 20 years. Illinois has made remarkable progress. In our core services in foster care, or sometimes called substitute care, back in the mid-'90s to late 90s, we had over 51,000 kids in this state who were in the child welfare system. There were so many kids, in fact, that they were sleeping in government offices. There weren't enough homes. There weren't enough foster parents for them. The system was in terrible, terrible disarray. As a matter of fact, President Bill Clinton at the time referred to it as the Calcutta of American child welfare. Since then, the system has improved dramatically, and it's improved because public policy took a fundamentally different turn here. No longer was the state actually in the services of providing foster care, but they took a step back and they began to work with agencies like ChildServ and others more as direction setters, strategists, folks who were monitoring and looking for outcomes and measuring, and increasing accountability, all of which over the last 20 years has dramatically improved child welfare here in Illinois. Now, what's happening today is that we run the risk of rolling those gains back because more kids are coming along, more kids need those services. We know that we have lots of folks who are in need of early childhood education. Every kid who enters kindergarten should know their ABCs, know their numbers, know their shapes, know their colors, be prepared to read, and be prepared to succeed in school. And without the sufficient budget, those kids won't get that chance.
Okay, well, at this point, it looks like we have a caller. Good evening, caller. This
Yes.
is ChildServ Live, and what's your question?
I would just like to ask the gentleman, what do he think about, we starting a whole new system, because this system has clearly failed us in the government, and we need to set up a better moral system where we have better ethics and moral for each human being, because Americans do not believe in good moral standards, and that's why our systems are all messed up. And like you said, they always claiming they have no money for this, no money for that, but they always busy with all these wars, going over to other countries, and then when it comes to our own backyard, no one want to clean it up. So I would like to know, can we start a new system and destroy this old system because it just don't work? Thank you.
That's a great question and a great comment. Very insightful because, in fact, we do have to make some pretty fundamental changes around here. Here in the state of Illinois, there is a movement on for a constitutional amendment requiring a fundamentally different approach to our tax system that is pushing for a graduated income tax rather than a flat tax. And every expert that I've talked to and a lot of legislators admit that without a change to a graduated income tax, this state will never get out of its economic problems right now. But you raise another interesting point. You talked about morals and ethics, and one of the points that I'd like to make is that you might have seen at the front end of this that the other part of my title to advocacy is church relations. And our faith communities have to be involved in this discussion. They have to pursue social justice because they do bring that sense of morality and ethics to it, and it's an important part of the discussion. So if you're a part of a faith community, I'd say go right back home and talk to your folks and see about getting involved in this kind of discussion. Without them, it's not going to happen.
Okay, thank you, caller. Now, Mike, in the foreseeable future, in your opinion, what may have a positive effect on this whole situation?
Well, there are a lot of good things happening. The problem is that some of the fundamental questions we've been stalemated on. We all look to Washington, D.C. these days, and we see the super committee, and we see the discussions about the debt and the debt ceiling and all of that, and what we see is a whole lot of partisanship. We look here in the state, and we saw that same kind of stalemate going on. Yes, we came away with a budget, but it's not a budget that we're all real happy about. I don't think anybody's happy about it. So I think the key point to understand about affecting this kind of change, how do we change things, is we all have to become involved. We all have to become child advocates. And I think whether you do that through your faith community, whether you do that through a civic organization or a community organization, whether you join with us at ChildServ in becoming an advocate for children here, the key to it is, it goes back, there's an old saying, democracy is not a spectator sport. It's not a spectator sport. If you're not involved, then your legislator doesn't know what you're thinking, doesn't know what you value. So you need to be involved to let them know.
Now, I'd like to remind you, viewers, especially those of you who are out there that have children in your lives that are really feeling the impact of what we're discussing here tonight, please give us a call. And it is a live call-in situation here. So dial 738-1060 and see what Mike's perspective will be on this. He is our Director of Advocacy at ChildServ, and we want to hear from you. Well, Mike, is there anything, in your opinion, because I know, you're very passionate about this, very much involved in this at all levels. So from your perspective, is there something that you'd like to see, people like myself and our viewers actually do to actively become involved? What are some of the things that are coming up and just ways that we can make a difference? Because we're all very different in what we have to bring to the table.
Right. I'm going to approach that in a couple of different ways. One is educate yourself. There are lots of opportunities to do that. I'm a big Facebooker, and I know lots of folks who Facebook for advocacy and social justice and child advocacy every single day. And there's something new and different there. But there's also, free opportunities. Like, for example, there is a seminar being held out in Naperville at the DePaul University facility in Naperville on Wednesday morning. It runs from 8:30 to about 1:30, and it's on what is called Kids Count. It's with Voices for Illinois Children. It's an opportunity to learn exactly what's going on, to come away with not only an understanding of what the statistics are and what has to be done, but also tools to do it. So if you have an opportunity to attend that, I'd say check out Voices for Illinois Children and come check out the seminar on Wednesday morning out in DePaul. If you can't do that, then I'd say check out some of our partners, folks like Child Care Association Illinois. Check out Illinois Partners for Human Service. Check out Responsible Budget Coalition. Every one of those organizations, Voices for Illinois Children, is a potential resource. And don't forget ChildServ's own Facebook and website. We have lots of information and lots of links there too. So starting off with that, but I also think that I want to come back to this notion that in addition to educating yourself, consider getting involved. Remember, I talked about 4 different types of advocacy at the front end of this, and I think it's important to remember that you have lots of different opportunities for advocacy. I'm one of those folks who believes that everybody has a skill for something, and if your skill doesn't lie in public policy advocacy, that's fine. Find another way to help at-risk kids and their families. Maybe that's volunteering as a mentor or as a tutor. Maybe that is volunteering to help raise funds for programs and services. Maybe that is helping to provide a workshop or put on an educational seminar, an issues forum, something like that. But be involved. Don't sit on the sidelines.
Thank you, Mike. And I believe that we have just a few more minutes left. Now, I know that we have, there's something special coming up this weekend. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, you bet. A lot of our Presbyterian friends will recognize this because the Presbyterian Church does a great job with it. There is a collaboration between many different denominations and Children's Defense Fund, and it's called Children's Sabbath. And Children's Sabbath is a wonderful opportunity for faith communities to understand better and to become involved in a very easy, kind of relaxed way to get to know child advocacy. What's up on the screen right now is the cover of the most recent manual, and if you go to the Children's Defense Fund website, www.childrensdefense.org, you can find this. Just look for Children's Sabbaths, and the hope is that it is celebrated on the 3rd Sunday of each October, but as the manual makes clear, it's whenever you can do it. So I would say take a look at that. and remember, child advocacy is year-round. Yes, we want to celebrate it. Yes, we do take a moment in October to celebrate it with Children's Sabbath, but it's a year-round activity.
Okay. And, just keep that in mind that the churches are definitely a excellent channel for advocacy as we look for ways to get involved. We do have a caller on the line. Good evening. What is your question, please? And thank you for calling in.
Yes, I noticed that the gentleman mentioned that slavery had been eliminated and Social Security was enacted. I would like to know, why did he use slavery for comparison?
Only just as an example that, if you remember, you go back in history, and what you found was a lot of faith communities lining up to change public policy. And that's all that I was going for in that was, whenever we all get together as groups and as individuals, and we passionately believe in a fundamental change in public policy, we can do it.
Right. That example could have been, just for the integration laws and civil rights. That was really an example. So thank you so much for calling in and asking that question. We did need to clarify that. Thank you. So, Mike, we are kind of winding up here. And there are some, ways that you mentioned that people can get involved. Just to summarize, I know you said one way is to become educated. We all do need to stay abreast of what the developments are, and not rely on our legislators to handle it. The legislators work for us. We need to remember that. We also need to recognize that the children are our future, regardless of what communities you're living in the Chicago area or anywhere in our society. So there are some specific things that Mike mentioned that had really a wide range of applications for the different skills, whether you have discretionary funds that you can contribute and financially support, or through service, and those 4 legs that you talked about of advocacy.
Absolutely. I think, the most important thing is, don't stand on the sidelines. If you are passionate about kids and you recognize that we all need to be child advocates, then find a way to get involved. As I said earlier, if your talents lean toward things like tutoring and mentoring or foster parenting, whatever that particular talent might be, let it guide you. If your talents lean towards public policy advocacy, then I would say you want to educate yourself to that. But I also want to invite you to request information from ChildServ. You can contact me at my email, which is madams@childserv.org. And specifically, if you want to join our Legislative Action Network, if you want to have access to resources about what's going on in Springfield and what's going on in Washington, D.C., whether you actively participate in contacting legislators or not, if you just want to know, then let us know. Write to us and say, count me in.
Okay, and Mike, that will be all the time that we have tonight. Thank you so much to our callers for calling in. Please be sure to join us next week when we're talking about foster parenting. Tonight we were with Mike Adams, our Director of Advocacy. He has so many titles. Our Director of Advocacy and Church Relations at ChildServ. And this is ChildServ Live. Please keep in mind this week, if there is a child in your life or that you find yourself interacting with, do something to make his or her life better. Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Thanks much, folks.